Hey sports card fans, it's John, Wade Boggs fan. Hope you're all doing well. For the second straight year, Cracker Jack issued a set of cards to be included inside boxes of their familiar product. This time, however, they expanded the set to 176 total cards and offered complete sets for sale through a mail-in offer. They also designed a special album to display the collection of cards as well. In addition to a larger checklist, the 1915 Cracker Jack set also offered collectors image variations that were different than those found in the 1914 set. Featuring virtually the same design and many of the same images as the cards in the 1914 Cracker Jack set, 1915 Cracker Jack has all the charm of the previous release. The set is designated E145-2 in the American card catalog. A color image of a player appears on the front, which showcases the headline Cracker Jack Ball Players at the top. A vivid red background also appears on the card. The colorized player photo, set against the deep, rich red background, creates a stunning contrast. The player's name, city, and league affiliation appear within the lower border of the card. Just like in 1914, the 1915 card backs feature the card number, a biography of the player pictured, and an advertisement stating that there are 176 cards in the complete set. Although they are very similar, there are a couple of key differences to distinguish the 1914 and 1915 Cracker Jack cards. A clear difference can be found on the back with the mention of a 176 card set. The 1914 set has 144 cards. Another notable difference in the 1915 set is that it was printed on a thicker cardboard-like stock. Perhaps the most obvious difference, the 1915 backs are printed upside down compared to the traditional way the 1914 cards are oriented. This allowed customers who mounted them onto the album using photo hinges, common in the day, to still be able to flip the cards over and easily read them. As noted on the card backs, collectors could send in 100 Cracker Jack coupons or 1 coupon and 25 cents to receive the full 1915 Cracker Jack set. Additionally, an album to house the set was available for 50 coupons or 1 coupon and 10 cents. While most of the players from cards 1 through 144 remain the same from 1914, some were updated to reflect a team or league change. In addition, Christy Matthews and Del Pratt had their images changed. 5 players who were part of the 1914 set were dropped from the set entirely because they left the major leagues and were replaced by new players. As for the final 32 cards, they were comprised of players who didn't originally appear in the 1914 set. Those cards carry a bit of a premium due to increased demand. Since Cracker Jack cards from 1915 were available directly from the company as well as in the candy boxes, more can be found in higher grades. Because of this, 1915 cards are generally less valuable than their 1914 counterparts. Vintage collectors often choose to pursue this set as opposed to the 1914 set for this very reason. The short-lived 2-year run of production left early collectors wanting more. Unfortunately, the start of World War I changed the company's focus and priorities. The Cracker Jack set has left an indelible impression on the hobby and the trading card landscape. In this video, I'm going to show the top 10 most valuable cards from the 1915 Cracker Jack set based on their PSA 2 values. I'll also give the values of those cards in higher grades, as well as the population count of those grades. Now, as a side note, because some cards have very low population counts, the values in some grades might not reflect current prices, since it may be a year or 2 or even more since a copy in that grade has been sold. In those cases, the price shown for the card is from the most recent sale in VCP's database. Now, before I get to the top 10, Here are the cards that just missed the top 10. At number 15, the Connie Mack card. At number 14, the Mordecai Three-Finger Brown card. At number 13, the Sam Crawford card. At number 12, the Rabbit Moranville card. And at number 11, the Ed Roush card. So, which cards made the top 10 list? Let's go find out. Coming in at number 10, we have the Eddie Collins card. In a PSA 2, there have been 16 graded copies with a VCP price of $1,550. There have been 13 graded a PSA 3. The last one sold for $1,175. There have been 10 graded a PSA 4. The last one sold for $455. There have been 13 graded a PSA 5. The last one sold for $2,160. There have been 8 graded a PSA 6. The last one sold for $2,520. There have been 17 graded a PSA 7. The last one sold for $9,300. There have been 15 graded a PSA 8. The last one sold for $10,898. And there has been 1 graded a PSA 9. The only PSA 9 copy in VCP's database, sold in May of 2019 through Heritage and sold for $50,400. And just like every card on this top 10 list, there's not been a PSA 10 graded copy of the Eddie Collins card. At number 9, we have the Tris Speaker card. In a PSA 2, there have been 15 graded copies with a VCP price of $1,680. There have been 13 graded a PSA 3. The last one sold for $1,747. There have been 6 graded a PSA 4. The last one sold for $1,580. There have been 8 graded a PSA 5. The last one sold for $4,800. There have been 7 graded a PSA 6. The last one sold for $7,350. There have been 15 graded a PSA 7. The last one sold for $10,996. There have been 22 graded a PSA 8. The last one sold for $22,607. There have been 3 graded a PSA 9. The only PSA 9 sale in VCP's database took place in December of 2007 through Mastro and sold for $12,131. At number 8, we have the Eddie Plank card. In a PSA 2, there have been 13 graded copies with a VCP price of $2,000. There have been 10 graded a PSA 3. The last one sold for $2,550. There have been 11 graded a PSA 4. The last one sold for $4,920. There have been 6 graded a PSA 5. The last one sold for $5,160. There have been 8 graded a PSA 6. The last one sold for $1,425. There have been 10 graded a PSA 7. The last one sold for $2,468. There have been 9 graded a PSA 8. The last one sold for $6,600. And there have been 2 graded a PSA 9. The only PSA 9 sale in VCP's database took place in May of 2019 through Heritage and sold for $45,600. At number 7, we have the Napoleon Looney card. In a PSA 2, there have been 10 graded copies with a VCP price of $2,280. There have been 14 graded a PSA 3. The last one sold for $3,000. There have been 12 graded a PSA 4. The last one sold for $10,926. There have been 9 graded a PSA 5. The last one sold for $1,560. There have been 8 graded a PSA 6. The last one sold for $2,509. There have been 11 graded at PSA 7. The last one sold for $8,100. There have been 17 graded a PSA 8. The last one sold for $38,006. And there have been 6 graded a PSA 9. The last PSA 9 sale took place in May of 2019 through Heritage and sold for $40,800. At number 6, we have the Christy Matthews card. In a PSA 2, there have been 9 graded copies with a VCP price of $3,277. There have been 11 graded a PSA 3. The last one sold for $6,000. There have been 4 graded at PSA 4. The last one sold for $4,320. There have been 19 graded a PSA 5. The last one sold for $16,625. Now, there have been 4 graded a PSA 6, but there have been no reported sales of any of those PSA 6 copies in VCP's database. There have been 15 graded a PSA 7. The last one sold for $6,456. There have been 19 graded a PSA 8. The last one sold for $93,000. And there have been 6 graded a PSA 9. The last PSA 9 sale took place in May of 2019 through that Heritage auction and sold for $78,000. At number 5, we have the Walter Johnson card. In a PSA 2, there have been 17 graded copies with a VCP price of $6,900. There have been 9 graded at PSA 3. The last one sold for $3,094. There have been 8 graded a PSA 4. The last one sold for $2,036. There have been 10 graded a PSA 5. The last one sold for $2,551. There have been 7 graded a PSA 6. The last one sold for $24,356. There have been 13 graded a PSA 7. The last one sold for $48,000. There have been 17 graded a PSA 8. The last one sold for $36,900. And there have been 5 graded a PSA 9. The last PSA 9 sale took place in August of 2017 through Memory Lane and sold for $50,400. At number 4, we have the Grover Cleveland Alexander card. In a PSA 2, there have been 10 graded copies with a VCP price of $7,162. There have been 7 graded a PSA 3. The last one sold for $1,575. There have been 8 graded a PSA 4. The last one sold for $6,600. There have been 12 graded a PSA 5. The last one sold for $10,500. There have been 6 graded a PSA 6. However, there have been no reported sales of any of those PSA 6 copies in VCP's database. There have been 12 graded a PSA 7. The last one sold for $20,400. There have been 16 graded a PSA 8. The last one sold for $55,498. And there's been 1 graded a PSA 9. The only PSA 9 sale in VCP's database took place in August of this year through Heritage and sold for $66,000. At number 3, we have the Honus Wagner card. In a PSA 2, there have been 11 graded copies with a VCP price of $16,800. There have been 14 graded a PSA 3. The last one sold for $13,420. There have been 8 graded a PSA 4. The last one sold for $18,600. There have been 10 graded a PSA 5. The last one sold for $25,200. There have been 11 graded a PSA 6. The last one sold for $24,000. There have been 7 graded a PSA 7. The last one sold for $42,000. There have been 17 graded at PSA 8. The last PSA 8 sale took place in August of 2022 through Mile High and sold for $50,043. Now, there have been 2 graded A PSA 9, but there have been no reported sales of either of those 2 copies in VCP's database. At number 2, we have the Ty Cobb card. In a PSA 2, there have been 26 graded copies with a VCP price of $18,000. There have been 10 graded A PSA 3. The last one sold for $10,800. There have been 14 graded A PSA 4. The last one sold for $63,000. There have been 13 graded A PSA 5. The last sale was $7,703, so that must be a very old sale. There have been 7 graded A PSA 6. The last one sold for $27,000. There have been 13 graded A PSA 7. The last one sold for $45,600. There have been 10 graded A PSA 8. The last one sold for $69,000. And there have been 3 graded A PSA 9. The last PSA 9 sale in VCP's database took place in April of 2019 through Heritage and sold for $504,000. And at number 1, we have the Shoeless Joe Jackson card. In a PSA 2, there have been 16 graded copies with a VCP price of $63,000. There have been 9 graded A PSA 3. The last one sold for $59,482. There have been 7 graded A PSA 4, probably another very old sale at $12,642. There have been 10 graded A PSA 5. The last sale was at $93,869. There have been 12 graded A PSA 6. The last one sold for $93,000. There have been 14 graded A PSA 7. The last one sold for $36,000. There have been 19 graded A PSA 8. Last PSA 8 sale in VCP's database took place in August of 2022 through Mile High and sold for $212,633. And there have been 2 graded A PSA 9. However, there have been no reported sales of either of those copies in VCP's database. Well, there you go, the top 10 most valuable cards from the 1915 Cracker Jack set. As always, would love to know in the comments what you think about the set and the cards that made the top 10 list. And stay tuned for next week's episode in which I wrap up my top 10 most valuable card videos series, in which I look at the 1911 T205 gold border set. And if you've missed either of the last 2 episodes in this series, you can check them out right here. With that, that's all I have for you. So until next time, thanks for watching.